Final hour overdrive continues, powered by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Bryan Hayes, Frankie Corrado, Jonas Siegel of The Athletic. Got Carter Hutton coming up here in a few moments. Steve Phillips later in the hour on the Garrett Cole injury and what that means for the AL East. Max Scherzer will skip a start on Thursday due to some soreness in his thumb. What does he make of that? And what does he make of what the Jays are doing as we get closer and closer to the opening day for Major League Baseball? So Phillips coming up a little bit later on. Breaking news this afternoon, Tiger Woods had surgery on a ruptured Achilles. It just kind of feels like that's the end of the road for Tiger. And, we got the players this weekend. And I had a little confirm and deny setup I wanted to get to. Confirm and deny, Scotty Scheffler will win one of the Players or the Masters. Do you have an answer on that, Frankie? You can jump in too, Jonas. Do you think he'll win one of these two tournaments because he won both of them last year?
I'll confirm it, but Scotty was going through something recently. I don't remember. What was Scotty dealing with recently?
He cut his hand, remember?
That's what it was.
He had the hands kind of, I don't know if he had surgery. I think he did have surgery. He cut his hand baking or making pasta or something like that.
Which really, it shouldn't affect him that much. I'll say just because of his track record of the familiarity at those courses, just knowing how to get around. They're not easy places to get around. Where do you miss? Where do you leave the ball to give yourself a good chance? The fact that he knows that and he can execute on that, I'll confirm one of the two, not two of the two.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to deny it, man. I think it's very difficult to continuously win at the rate that he was winning at. Like last year, he went Arnie Palmer, Players, Masters, and then won at Harbor Town the next week. He won 4 elevated events in a month and a half. And that's just absurd what he was doing. And he's still playing well, but this week he wasn't really in contention at the Arnie Palmer. And I think it's tough to do, man. To win your third Masters in 4 years, I think it would be very difficult to do. And the Players is a tough track. It's tough to score consistently at that place. I think he'll be in tough. But I'm looking forward to seeing what the Canadians do this week. A lot of Canadians in the field, and I believe 4 going to Augusta National in a few weeks. So it's going to be a really fun time of year if you're a golf fan.
I saw someone tweeting out about Corey Connors. Just like one of those, if you're on your For You page, you'll just see a random tweet, someone you don't follow. And I saw it was like, Corey Connors is going to win the Masters.
He loves playing there, man. He plays really well at that course. You just got to putt. You got to go low on Sunday. That's the thing with Connors. He had 17 pars and a birdie on Sunday. 1 under, really good score, but that's not going to win. You got to shoot 65 on Sunday. That's what he's got to do to get over the top, and you'd have to do that at Augusta as well. But he plays it really well, and he's a really good player, and he's playing very well right now. Kind of feels like golf weather a little bit in Toronto. I saw Shorts guy is just flaunting his stuff.
Buddy. You
guys wore shorts today outside?
Yeah, it was a bit of a mistake.
That's absurd behavior. Jonas, explain yourself.
Today was 12.
No, it wasn't
warm.
12.
It was maybe today.
10.
I was running, so and it looked so sunny, and then I got outside, and it was just gushes of wind.
Yeah, it was.
I was what are you doing?
It's a 3-club wind today. Okay, Jonas, 3-4 club wind.
Yeah,
and you're out
tough.
there in shorts. I was in shorts yesterday because garbage day is today. So I put everything out yesterday, and I was out there in shorts and a T-shirt and flip-flops. And I'm sure
I'll give you that
if people were looking at it, they're like, "This guy's
shorts
goofy."
guy is Jonas, who is entering society. You know what I mean? And with risking running into people and seeing people, and you're out there, you're doing something outdoors. Taking garbage out doesn't count. That all rules are off for that for the most part. People do that and. House coats, no gear, it's prison rules when it comes to that stuff. But Jonas going outside in 10 feels like 5 weather in shorts is borderline prison move.
You jumped the gun.
You can't have that. You can't have kids looking up to you saying this is how adults are supposed to act.
That's what behavior. People like me that live in the burbs and then go downtown, with the young kids, will be like, yeah, honey, people are crazy down here, and they're pointing at you running in
the
shorts.
tough thing is last week I saw people in shorts when it was legitimately cold. I was like, what are these jokers doing?
Yeah.
It's freezing.
It's so cold still. Like, it was beautiful today. Sunny and 10 degrees or whatever. We'll take it. But you got to wear pants, Jonas. Like, you got to wear pants.
I got excited about the weather.
I would appear so.
By the way, I know we have Carter Hutton coming up.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let me forget. Someone dropped by the studio and was really not happy with you, so I need to bring that up.
I have a feeling I know where this is going. And I mean, we'll see, all right, Jonas? I don't know if I'm in the mood because I know who it's going to be, and I don't want to hear from this guy.
I heard about this, and we're 2 hours in, and there's
he'll be upset with me.
It hasn't come up.
All right, if you're in a position where the guy's going to be annoying, and if it's who I think it is, he will be annoying. He'll bother you and annoy you. So we'll get to it. We'll play it later on. Steve Phillips coming up. Best bets later in the hour. Here is a former NHL goalie. You hear him on SiriusXM and see him also on Daily Faceoff. Here's Carter Hutton back on OverDrive. What's happening, Carter?
Hey, not much, buddy. I'll tell you, Jonas, you're not going to wear shorts up in Thunder Bay. That's a crazy move.
No chance.
I know you're in the beautiful place of Toronto, but come on, buddy. Shorts this time of year is a wild move. I'm all on board for that.
You just get tricked. Like, you look outside and you're like, man, it's great out there.
It's March 11th, though, Jonas. Like, it's one of those things, like, you shouldn't even be thinking shorts until you get to mid-April, in my opinion.
It said 12, and I must have missed the real feel.
Real feel is the actual temperature, too. Can we clarify that? Like, I don't care. If it's 30,
100%.
It feels like 4, it's 4. Yeah. Like, it
is that not the worst
care.
when it says it's like -10, but it feels like -20, whatever. Well, Thunder Bay, that's how we roll. But the feel, like, just get rid of everything else. Tell me what it feels like. That's what we all want to know.
Completely
I played with a guy
the other number.
In junior hockey, what is up with you guys in Thunder Bay? Because I played with a guy from Thunder Bay, and he made it a point in the middle of winter to still wear Crocs and a hoodie and not wear his coat. Just be like, this is fall weather in T-Bay. And we're in Sudbury. He's like, we're just, T-Bay. We're just built different.
That's a tough look. I don't know. I can't say I'm on board with him there. And the Crocs.
Okay.
That was probably before Crocs were cool, too, when you were playing junior, too. So.
Oh, yeah.
That's valid. And to your point, it's Sudbury, dude. You're not in North Carolina. Like, Sudbury's incredibly cold. It's, central Ontario. It's not necessary to try to, beat the elements in Sudbury at all. How about that Linus Ullmark last night? We haven't brought up his game yet today. We've been talking a lot about the Leafs and Marchand and Florida-Boston tonight. 48 saves. Some of them were just remarkable. Like they almost beat him right before the Wild. It was incredible last night at the end of the game. And Detroit, all of a sudden, like a month ago, was like, you can't stop them. Now they can't win. But if Ullmark plays anything close to the way he played last night, are you prepared, Carter, to say, like, the Sens are a lock, they're going to make the playoffs?
I am right now. I've been a big backer since they got Ullmark, right? I guess I'm biased too, right? I spent 3 years with him, and I saw how easy he gets it done, right? I think it was a time in Buffalo where, again, last night's a great example of that, Hazy. Like, he gets, what do you end up with, 49 saves, right? 48 saves on 49 shots. And I remember a few times in Buffalo. I remember one time we were playing the Devils, and we waxed them like 6-1 or something at home. And he came to the bench at the third period, second time out. It was after the 10-minute mark. And I think at that point he had 41 saves. And he's leaning on the bench, and he's taking a drink of water, and he doesn't have an ounce of sweat on him. And I'm like, this guy is so amazing, the way he can manage the game. At that point in his career, I guess he was like misunderstood because he's a unique guy, right? Even you hear his interview last night, and he's always comes up. He's a great guy to interview, right? Because he comes up with some interesting stuff. But for Linus, he is just so elite, the way he can manage the game, the way he manages emotion. And he has that like carefree about him where I think he can compartmentalize things in that side of the game, which is so important. I think for him it was just maturity, and going to Boston for him with like a more, I don't want to, Buffalo's had a tough enough time as it is, but you get out of that leadership group we had in Buffalo, and he gets to go to a place like Boston where he has leaders, right? He has guys to like learn under it and understand how to be a pro. And now he branches out to a younger team, and now he has that good foundation of his skill and his goaltending to go along with a younger Ottawa Senators team. I think it's a perfect mix. And if he can stay healthy, I consider them a real big threat to get in the playoffs. And, who knows what happens when they get in, especially the top six is looking pretty good in the East. But for that being said, I think he's been awesome so far, and I assume that will continue.
Speaking of goalies that have been awesome, you called something on this show, I think it was back in September. You said, up in Thunder Bay, I've been training with Mackenzie Blackwood. This guy is up to something this season. And anyone would have been a little skeptical just based on the way the past few seasons have gone, but he's been unbelievable. He was great in San Jose. He's been great in Colorado. What have you seen? What gave you that notion that Mackenzie Blackwood was going to have this great season? Because you called it. You called it before the season.
Well, I'm glad you remember, Frankie, because usually they just remember the bad stuff, right? Like when I tricked Bill Armstrong into a contract and I played 3 games and gave up 7 goals against the game. But honestly, Mackenzie's just one of those guys, growing up, he was always so elite athletically. He's a big build. He's built like a linebacker. And I remember when he was young, he was doing giant power lifts and lifting. Remember grabbing him being like, hey, you need to find someone to teach you how to be the best goalie you can be off the rink, right? And at that point in my career, selfishly, I was trying to figure out what I needed to figure out. But as you started to see him put the pieces together on the rink and add the tools to his toolbox, right? Because there's not many goalies like him that have the build, the athletic capabilities to move around the net and function the way he can. So it's interesting to see the experience coming into play, right? And again, in the NHL now, we see all these young guys come up, and we want guys to be good right away. We see it all the time, right? Especially with players where, you're drafted, you got to be good right away. What's going on? Why is this guy? This guy's a flop. He's not good. And there's so many other things that go into hockey. And I think Mackenzie now has all the experience. He's been exposed to everything. He has the maturity to understand about it. And I think what's really important to me is having conversations with the summer where we were on the ice. He said he's learned how to care less. And it's never something you really want to hear, I guess, from your goalie if you're a fan. But I get it because sometimes you care so much and you want to do well and you prepare and you try to get ready where it almost has an opposite effect because you're putting too much pressure on yourself. You got to be in the moment when it's the moment, right? And then be able to get away from it. And I think for him, that's where his maturity has come in. And now we're seeing it full tilt. He's in a market where they're expected to win. You have Nathan McKinnon, your captain, who is a demanding captain, and he's able to go to the rink, have fun, use his ability, and then turn it off. And I think that's where we're seeing it full tilt right now. And it's been fun to watch. And Colorado is a threat. That trade deadline changed everything. I think this league just got a lot more exciting these last 20 games here.
Big time. With former NHL goalie Carter Hutton. I want to reference this stat that I saw last night and I got into earlier this afternoon from the NHL on TNT, where they said going into last night's game, Joseph Woll had stopped 42 shots faced during crunch time situations. The only goalie in the league with a perfect save percentage in those situations. So this is how they define crunch time situation. The final 5 minutes of a regulation and overtime game when the game is either tied or within a 1-goal margin. When you hear a stat like that, do you put any stock into something like that? When you were playing, when you evaluate current goalies, how do you separate maybe the first 55 minutes compared to the last 5 minutes or into overtime, or is that just simply arbitrary, that you can pick anything? Why is it 5 minutes instead of 10 or the third period instead of the first 2 periods? How do you kind of look at a stat like that when you see Joseph Woll and how comfortable and how successful he seems to be when games are really, really tight late in the game?
I guess you could say it a bit arbitrary in the sense of you could grab any time and make it work, right? Because I know in the NHL we love to do that. From January 12th on Sunday games that are matinee games, he's perfect, right?
Exactly.
But at the end of the day, though, he is showing that he can get it done when it matters, right? And I think that is something that is really important. And I think last night's a great example of a team that's on the road. It's a tough game. Now you're up 3-0, right? And you could view it in the sense of we blew a 3-goal lead, right? But in the same sense, he comes up with timely saves. And something that was taught to me when I was younger was it's not necessarily how many saves you make, it's when you make them, right? And there's key moments in games that can flip a game on its side. And I think last night's a great example of imagine being in that situation, because I've been in it where you've blown a 3-goal lead, right? And now the other team is coming in, they're all over you. To have the mental capacity to stay with it. And something we've seen from Joseph Woll, and I always love the clips of him, especially last night and throughout the season, is you can see him almost in his zen state when he's in net, right? He's focused, he's dialed in, and his demeanor doesn't really go up and down with the play. And I think that's something that's very reassuring. And Hazy, I'm with you the fact that sometimes these stats, you never really know what to take from them, because I feel like sometimes we can spin them and make them sound better than they are. But for a young goalie, his maturity level is unbelievable. Again, I think this has been a great season in the sense of he never got hurt again, right? He came back. Stolarz was out. He had to carry the mail. He's done well. And yes, there's been a little bit of blips on the radar, but who doesn't have that? We look at every goalie in the league. This is a humbling league in that sense. So I feel like it's a really good stat for him to go off of. And for me, it's not even this numbers, it's the eye test, right? Watching him in a moment last night where he needs to be dialed in. He was so locked in that shootout in overtime and able to get the 2 points for his team, which was huge.
Carter, on a different front, you played with Rasmus Dahlin in Buffalo. So I want to play you his quotes today and see what you make of that.
Rasmus, there's a clip circulating on social media from the Spitin Chicklets podcast that said, if you guys don't figure this out soon, you want to be moved. Is that accurate?
Who?
Paul Bissonnette.
Who wants to be moved?
You.
I want to be moved?
You said you asked if you told Adam something.
That I want to be gone from Buffalo?
No,
that's, I don't know what he's talking about. I've never said I want out of here. I'm not happy where we're at. I don't want to lose. We have to get better. But I've never said I want out of here. I thought that was pretty clear.
All right. What do you make of that?
Yeah. I honestly, I believe him that he doesn't want to leave, but in the same sense, he wants to win. This is a guy that I got the chance to play with when he first came in. He was competitive right out of the gate. And I mean, a lot of times we lost games because of Rasmus Dahlin and our group, because he was a young guy that played with a lot of high risk in his game. But he's at a point now where he wants to win. I think everybody around hockey wants Buffalo to win, right? And again, I think they've done a better job of him now getting some better core pieces around him, some leadership, where I remember a moment when I was in Buffalo, and this, I don't really think I've ever confessed this to too many people. I'm doing it now on national TV, but there was after a game we had lost, I forget who we played, whatever. There was a lot of losses in Buffalo, as you can imagine. And Rasmus Dahlin was a guy that wore it on his sleeve. Very, he was sandpaper, right? He was a guy that we would get in a lot of FU matches after games, and we'd come back the next day and we'd go to work. And that's part of being a man and playing the NHL. And I remember coming in, I had done media, and I went into the locker room, and Dahlin was already out of the shower in his suit, ready to go. He didn't go into the gym, didn't work out. He was 18 years old. And I remember grabbing him, and I was pretty hot at the time because we had lost an important game, and getting it into him with him because Ristolainen had done it before, and the precedent had been set. I think that was where our culture was at as a team. And I remember Dahlin coming back to me the next day and apologizing. And I was like, you don't have to apologize to me. I'm just trying to help you become a pro, where you need to get, right? You have all the tools, and this is part of the building process. And even at that point, he wanted to win so bad that, he couldn't really see the forest through the trees, right? That was where he was at. And I think he's grown a lot as a person. But I can't imagine being able I played in Nashville where we made the playoffs. I was in Chicago where I was part of their Stanley Cup run. St. Louis, we had really good teams. And then all of a sudden you've been there for so long losing. I spent 3 seasons of losing, and it really, is almost like a blip in my radar during that, how much it hurt my career and just the way, dealing day to day, coming to the rink. So I can't imagine what he's dealing with. But there's one thing I will tell you about Rasmus Dahlin. He's super prideful, and he will do everything he can to win. So I'd assume he wants things to get better, but there's no way he's going to try to bail. He's going to try to be part of the solution. So I get things get spun in the media, but I understand where he's coming from.
I thought he handled it perfectly. He said exactly what he was supposed to say. He didn't divulge anything more. He was very direct and to the point. But when it comes to Buffalo, okay, we know Pittsburgh is trying to turn things around. Boston has traded pieces. They're going to try and get back into the top 3 in the Atlantic. Philly's a rebuilding team. If you're Buffalo or you're a Buffalo fan, how hard is it to look at everyone making moves around you and say, there's no guarantee that we're going to be out of the basement next season or the season after that?
Yeah, I think that's probably the hardest part looking at it, right? And some of those contracts, obviously moving on from Cousins, getting him out of there, the Samuelson deal, and just locking guys up long term. And I came from Nashville with David Poile. That was one of his favorite things, right? Getting guys on those 8-year deals early for small money, hoping that they pan out. I remember Roman Josi at one point was the most underpaid defenseman in the league. I remember the boys, we used to always ask him if he was okay for money because he was only making $4 million a year. And that was the running joke, right? Because he was so underpaid. They make sure he had enough money for groceries. But I get it in Buffalo, right? It's and I think that's always the interesting part now about the NHL and the salary cap era is, do you just rip it down to the studs, right? Because now I think everybody looks at that template in Buffalo and you're a little bit worrisome, right? It's yeah, we can go and get all these picks, but it doesn't mean it's going to turn around, right? You need the right leadership. You need the right group. And I think at some point, Frankie, they have to go get some guys now that are going to help this team go in the right way. I feel like they've tried to, but I feel like you need to make a big splash. You need to send a message to your fan base, someone that we're trying to move in the right direction. And again, like I talked about with Mackenzie Blackwood, I love UPL. I think Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen's a great goal. I think Devin Levi's a great goalie. But, like, they rush guys into this league. It's so hard to play in this league and sustain it. And, like, we see it this year with Shilovs in Vancouver, right? After his playoff run last year, we're like, hey, we don't have to worry about Demko. We have Shilovs. He's the next coming, right? Where now you got to grind every day and figure it out. And not that he lost skill, right? Like Mitch Korn, great goalie coach, used to always tell me, you don't lose skill overnight. Right. And it's a great example, but this league can humble you, right? When you're playing on emotion and you're trying to find, I guess that zen of being a pro. And I think that's where Buffalo fans and people really need to, I guess, be reassured that this organization is going to trend in the right direction, because it's been a long run. And I'm pulling for them, but it doesn't seem like it's heading in the right direction this year.
No, it's been a long time, man. What is it, 13, 14 years without the playoffs, and likely to finish last in the East again this year. It's been a grind. He is former NHL goalie. You hear him on SiriusXM. You can see him also on Daily Faceoff. He is Carter Hutton. Great catching up with you, Carter. We always appreciate you doing this.
Thanks, boys. Thanks for having me on.
You got it. There he is. Again, Carter Hutton, always great insight.
That Buffalo thing, I'll tell you what, man. There's a lot of good young players there, and they traded Cousins, and they got a good player back in Josh Norris. It's almost like you got to look at the blue line, and one of those three guys, whether it's Dahlin, which I wouldn't want to trade, or Power, or Byram, you got to talk another team into saying, you guys got to give us something really nice for one of these guys and overhaul it that way. Because by the time you draft these guys, they're not going to be ready. You're going to have a hard time building your team in free agency like we talked about with MJ, and there's going to be other teams that are in better positions to win, that are going to win those bids. Like, that's the avenue for these guys. That's the only way they can go if they want to change it.
Yeah, it's crazy that it's been this long where not only have they missed the playoffs, they haven't been close to making the playoffs. Yeah. Like, that's what is maybe even more staggering, or possibly just difficult to digest if you're a Sabre fan. If you've been on the border, or you're pushing up against it, and you finish with 88 points, and how do you get over the top? How do you get in? They're at the bottom of the barrel every single year. Every year. They're terrible. And this year's no different. And they took it down to the studs for Eichel, but they were basically there before he showed up. Like, they took Sam Reinhart second overall. Mm-hmm. That was before Eichel and McDavid. And
they had Ryan O'Reilly on the team. They had Brandon Montour. They had Allmark. They've had countless examples. There's been so many great players that have been there at the same time.
Yes.
That's the thing. All these good players that have gone elsewhere and have had success, they were in Buffalo at pretty much the same time.
And it still didn't work, which is fascinating. They had Allmark, and look at the way he's playing. All right, Steve Phillips coming up. Jonas, do you want to set this up? We can play whatever this is that evidently we have to play.
You want me to do this now or after?
I guess so, yeah. What do you have
Well,
for
so
us?
I came to the studio, and someone popped in, and he was really hot, and he said, "Where is that Hayes? He's a fraud."
Okay.
And then you can hear what else he had to say.
All right.
This is a message to Bryan Hayes and the bot farmer himself, Al's bro. You guys made a deal. There's nothing worse than human beings who can't keep their word. There's a deal and a statement that was supposed to be made for the losers of the Super Bowl. Doogie tried to jam us, didn't work. O-Dog and myself won the Super Bowl, won the championship. We need our hats, and we need the statement. Hayes, this is the ultimate fraudulent move, and I will not stand for it. You will be saying the statement and get me in parts of your hats. Thank you.
All right. So there's a lot of detail there. For starters, I do have their hats. You can see them. The playoff champs. I will get them their hats. These idiots, and that's what they are, the two of them, Luke Wilson and Jeff O'Neill, they had a lead going into the Super Bowl. Right. Last year we beat them in the playoffs. They've never actually acknowledged that. It's like election deniers, right? Last year Al's brother and I won in the playoffs. They still contend that it didn't happen. It was a tie. So I'll give you my statement where they wanted us to come on and say they're the best and we suck or whatever it was. I don't even remember the details of the statement. I haven't seen Al's brother. I'm assuming he's on a cruise somewhere right now. But if and when I get to meet up with Al's brother, we will issue a statement. But I want a statement myself in response. I want full acknowledgement that we won the playoffs last year. When they do that, they can have their statement. So you send that back to Luke Wilson, and wherever he is in there, Jonas, if you see him crawling along the halls anywhere, I don't even know what he's doing in there. I know NFL's got a lot of free agency kind of news and notes coming in daily, but we'll get to our statement when he makes his own statement.
Is there ever a world where the teams all change and you guys get
that was the whole thing. Like at the forefront of all of this was Luke was with Al's brother and going up against me, and I was dismantling them. And then they fired Luke, and Luke crawled over to me, and I accepted him with pity. I said, "You can be on my team, fine. I'll let you, show you the ropes on how to win." Sure enough, we went on this remarkable run. We won, and then he flipped on me, and then he went back to at Al's brother, and they fired Al's brother, so Al's brother came over with me. It's been a whole circus. But as of now, I'm very confident in myself and my partner. I don't want anything to do with or Luke when it comes to NFL gambling. So I'll stick with Al's brother. But anything's possible, Jonas. To answer your question, anything's possible. And we got a long time before we get back to September. And I don't want to press fast forward, man. We're just getting out of winter. Like, we're just getting into nice weather in the spring and stuff like that. I don't want to fast forward anything because before you know it, Stanley Cup playoffs, NBA playoffs, the Masters, outside golfing, running with shorts on.
Shorts. There's nothing like, Jonas, there's nothing like going to morning skate in shorts. You ever go to morning skate in shorts?
I would never do that. People do that, and I just think, God.
Players must just destroy you if you were to do that.
If you show up in shorts, I think there's certain coaches that would be like, yeah, you're not a part of this presser today. Go put some pants on.
I don't think that should be allowed. That should honestly be a fine, or you're just banned from the building. If you show up in shorts to cover a morning skate or a scrum or a game.
I think I've seen people come in sandals.
Really?
And I'm like,
no socks, sandals, shorts.
And shorts.
Yeah.
Can you imagine, Jonas, you're just going for a jog and you're like, I'll go check in on morning skate, just all sweaty with your gitch on.
Crazy to me. I mean, maybe Cup final off day in Florida. Maybe even that I think is pushing it. We're professionals here. Come on. Yeah. But okay.
There's got to be at least a couple shorts guys that work in our Toronto little media scene that have done it in the past.
Confirmed.
I could see that. I could definitely see that. I could see a summer presser, like when Matthews was announced as the captain. There would have been people in there with shorts, T-shirt,
and that's
sandals.
No go for you.
I don't. It's a professional setting. Throw on some pants and shoes.
You have to wear a credential to get into these
things.
You're
representing a company or yourself. Come on. All right. We will catch up with Steve Phillips, get his take on Garrett Cole, Tommy John. What does it mean for the Yankees? What does it mean for the American League East? And what's he hearing out of Jay's camp down in Dunedin in terms of how they're looking? And as we get closer and closer to opening day Major League Baseball. Best bets later in the hour. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app. All right, best bets powered by FanDuel later in the hour. We're getting through spring training, and it's always a war of attrition. Who's going to get to the finish line of spring training healthy? And there's always injuries. And if it happens to specific players on specific teams, it's going to make more noise, and it's going to open the door to more debate as to how it's going to affect the season. And I think when you consider what's going on with the Yankees, Juan Soto leaving in free agency, I don't think Stanton's going to play this year. And now Garrett Cole, we know, won't play this year. He's having Tommy John. He's done for the year. Does it open the door for other teams in the American League East? What does it mean for the Yankees? To get into that and more, here's our TSN baseball insider, Steve Phillips. Steve, I don't know how you felt about the Yankees coming into spring training, but when you consider the news on Stanton and now the news on Garrett Cole, how does it change your projection for what they might do this season?
Yeah, I think it takes them really. I mean, throw in Luis Gil as well in there. Remember, he was the guy that saved their season last year. As much as Aaron Judge was the American League MVP, he wasn't really the MVP of the Yankees. I think you could make a case that despite Soto having a great year and Judge having a great year, Luis Gil saved their season. That when Garrett Cole went down for the first 2+ months of the season, it was a rookie starting pitcher, Luis Gil, who saved their year, that he pitched like Garrett Cole. And really, was the one who got them through the first couple months until Cole came back. And so, and now he's out with a lat strain potentially for a couple months. And so they've lost two key parts of that rotation to where Marcus Stroman, who was whining that he wanted to be traded and wasn't happy, is now their number 4 starter. And Will Warren, who was a guy that was going to start the year in AAA, is now their number 5 starter. And Max Fried, who was added in the offseason, they didn't get Juan Soto, moves to the number 1 spot in the rotation. And they're going to have to, mix and match and pieces together. I thought the Yankees and the Red Sox were the class of the East. And right now, I think the Red Sox are the best team in the East. And the Yankees will have to fight for a wild card spot right now. And so now Gil will be back at some point. Cole lost for the year. But I have some real questions about how the Yankees are going to score runs this year. In 2023, they were 25th in runs scored in the American League when they didn't have Juan Soto. And, they're going to have Jazz Chisholm for the full year, and they have Cody Bellinger. But Paul Goldschmidt has not had a great spring. I think he's hitting like 250, and he can't hit the hard fastball. LeMahieu is limping around the clubhouse. Dominguez doesn't really handle the fly balls in left field all that well. And so there's some questions about whether he's going to be able to hit enough right now, too. So, they've got some major questions, the Yankees. And, they've rebuilt their bullpen a bit. But I think that to me, they're not necessarily the runaway leader in the American League East right now. And they have fallen back to the pack.
It always feels like with the Yankees, too, like a lot of it hinges on Judge. Like the year that he was going on his historical home run pace, it was like, well, if Judge isn't doing it, they had a hard time generating it elsewhere. And I think where the Blue Jays factor into that is they're going to have a strong rotation, but now Max Scherzer dealing with a right thumb soreness, his start gets pushed back. Like, is that kind of what you expected to get things up and running for Scherzer, or is that a little more of a concern?
Well, that's a concern because the thumb issue, is tied to the nerve issue. And that's what, I was just in their camp just the other day, and he was talking about how good he felt and that the nerve issue was the thing that was the problem, that his back was so much better, but the nerve was the issue, and it was feeling so much better. But whenever that thumb started acting up, it was because the nerve was running down from his shoulder, down through his arm, down the forearm to the thumb. And now that the thumb's flaring up, it does make you worry a little bit about that nerve that starts up in the shoulder, and that may be something that continues to be an issue for him. So, that is a concern, and that is where some of the power and the velocity comes from for him. So something to keep an eye on. We'll see whether that's a thing or not. But, even with that, I think that, the Blue Jays should still have a good rotation. And I think that, the question was, were you going to expect 30 starts or 32 starts from Scherzer? I was hoping that maybe you'd get 24 quality starts from him, and then Yurio Rodriguez might mix in for some starts there, and you maybe later in the year you'd mix in one of the young guys into the mix at some point too. And so your hope is you'd get as much out of Scherzer as you can, as healthy as you can, because when he's healthy, he's going to be pretty good. But, you got to get him healthy, and he's not going to help you if he's not on the field, because when he is healthy, I think he is going to be very good. But, you got to keep an eye on it and monitor it, and it's going to be, after every start, you're going to be thinking about whether or not he's going to be healthy and able to make the next one.
With Steve Phillips, there's still, a number of things that need to be determined as we get through camp down in Dunedin. And you said it. You were just, around the team a couple of days ago trying to get a read on where they stand. The batting order has been a kind of a daily conversation up here. It sounds like Vladdy will hit second. Santander will hit third. And I think Bichette's going to get leadoff duties for a good portion of the season as long as he's comfortable in that role. I get the impression like Bo kind of wants that. What is your read on the situation in terms of Bichette and the importance of them picking the right guy to lead off day in, day out?
Yeah, I think that I think the lineup's going to be malleable. I think that John Schneider will ride a hot hand for it. And if somebody cools off, he'll put somebody else in there. He may work matchups with it. I want somebody who wants the role. And, I think there's something about Bo Bichette who's hungry this year. And, a leadoff hitter who goes up there with, some level of swag and energy, who's got something to prove, I kind of like that. And the idea that Bichette's got something to prove and wants to go up there and lead the team and lead his career and make a statement, this is a statement year for him. And so I kind of like the notion of him up there to set things off and set the stage, because he's got some ground to make up in his career right now. And so I don't mind that at all if that's something that he wants. And I wouldn't mind him being given that opportunity to go out there and do that right now. And so I might reward that for him and see if he can't carry it for a while. And if he can, go run it. And let's see what he can do. And if some point he cools off a little bit and somebody else is hot, then I might run them up there too and just play it out a little bit. And if matchups come into play and, you got a tough right-hander on the mound and there's a left-handed bat that's hot, then I might run that guy up there too. So I don't think you have to necessarily lock in on it. I just want somebody getting on base in front of Vladimir Guerrero Jr., which I think is the most important factor.
Well, Steve, speaking of Vladimir Guerrero Jr., I'm seeing a report from Ken Rosenthal at The Athletic, and I will read you the first two lines. The number Vladimir Guerrero Jr. wants is $500 million, not $500 million before deferrals, but $500 million in present value, according to sources briefed on the first baseman's contract negotiations with the Toronto Blue Jays. What do you make of that report and number?
Well, yeah, I guess it just depends upon over how many years, right? And so is that over 10 years? Is that over 14 years? That's where it matters, right? Is what's the annual average value of that contract? And it seems like therein lies some part of the difference, because what we heard was that, what he told ESPN Deportes is that, they offered him 15 years, just under $600 million. Now, whether that was deferred money or whether it was just spread out over 15 years, where the AAV was under a certain amount, that he wanted the AAV more and he didn't want to spread out over a period of time. It all depends, what the structure is of the deal. So I don't know what the 500 means. 500 million spread out over what period of time?
It looks like 14 million or 14 years, is what he might be looking for.
Well, John Heyman, I guess, of the Post, reporting that Toronto proposed an extension for around $500 million with deferrals to Vladdy that would have put the net present value in the range of $400 to $450 million. I'm assuming that's is that a 15 million or 14-year, 15-year deal, something like that, Steve? I mean, I would have to believe it, but for me, that is surprising. Not that Vladdy's asking for what he's asking for. I think that's become clear. What is surprising to me is this Heyman report. If it's true that the Jays were willing to, offered him $400 to $450 million, that is a massive move for them over the course of a 6-month period. Because I don't believe they were comfortable giving him $300 million a year ago. Now they've gone up $100 million, $150 million. That's a lot of money that the Jays have moved on, Steve.
I agree, and I think that there's some level where I think that they deserve some acknowledgement of credibility, that they're making a distinct effort to try to keep their player. And he's not Juan Soto. And they have made an effort and a statement that they want to keep him, that they have moved to a level that is a record-setting number for not only the organization, but it would be a record-setting number for a right-handed hitting first baseman. It would be a record-setting number, beyond a Mike Trout contract, and quite honestly, it's beyond where Aaron Judge's deal is. It's an extraordinary offer coming from the Blue Jays. And, this notion that this front office isn't willing to invest or go there and for them to get ownership. And remember, these are ownership decisions. but the front office has to convince them to do it. And so for them to go there, to get them to go to that number and to push them off of where they were before, the front office has to get them to do it. And so, as much maligned as they have been, it has taken some convincing to get them to go there. And, they do deserve some credit for doing it. Now, they may or may not get it done. And if they don't get it done, they're going to catch flack for it. And I get it. But, they have made what certainly sounds like a very significant offer, and people can judge whether or not they're serious enough about it. But it doesn't sound like an offer good enough to lose the player. It sounds like an offer where they thought they were really going to try to get a deal done.
Yeah, like the way it reads to me now is that Vladdy's not really negotiating. He's saying this is it, and I'll stay if you take my number. In other words, I win the negotiation, right. I puff my chest out, and if you're not comfortable with that, so be it. Because I'm reading the report; it's just coming out that I guess Vladdy eased his stance on deferrals closer to the deadline, but was still seeking the present value at $500 million. So what complicates this is the deferrals. There's some sort of calculation that puts $765 million or $700 million into context of what it actually means for current value when you consider deferrals being paid well into the future and inflation and all that. And the way this post report, I guess, is crunching the numbers would indicate that if he is looking for a present-day value of $500 million total, to put that into perspective, Shohei Ohtani's $700 million deal with the Dodgers last year before the season had a present-day value of $460 million. So, in other words, Vladdy wants more money than Shohei Ohtani.
That's right.
Which I'm sorry, is just absurd. Like, obviously is absurd.
Right. That's right. I mean, that's really what he wants is a present value more than Shohei Ohtani. And what makes it even more absurd is that when Soto took it beyond there, but what happened was that the agents will say, well, that was the market then, but Soto created a new market, and therefore Ohtani's contract isn't relevant anymore because Soto set a new market. Now, I look at it and think Soto is a one-off because you had a perfect storm of two New York owners who they weren't. And so the reality is Soto's relevant, so is Ohtani relevant. And, you can make an argument that Soto doesn't matter for Guerrero. You could say that Ohtani does matter, but I understand they're trying to tie it to Soto. I get it, but it doesn't seem like there's any world in which you can justify Guerrero making more than Ohtani.
No, you can't. I mean, I get he's younger and he means a lot to this market, and he's entitled to ask for whatever he wants, and he's under contract and he's going to perform this year. And if he's going to walk, he's going to walk. And doomsday may hit, and the Jays are going to have to make a tough choice. But if these reports are accurate, and you knew this was just a matter of time before the leaks came out on both sides, like it was just a matter of time. Both are going to try to play the game and both try to win PR here. If Vladdy's looking for more, money technically than Ohtani, that's crazy. And I think if the Jays were willing to go to $450 million, that is legitimate negotiation. That's not lowballing him. That's legitimate. Yet, in the end, Steve, they still might they might lose the player, and maybe he gets that money somewhere else, and they'll have to face that reality when they get to it. It's crazy.
Yeah, the other thing, guys, really interesting. We interviewed Vladdy in camp, and one of the things that really was interesting is he said one of the things that needs to be better is our clubhouse. Our clubhouse wasn't good last year. We need everybody in the boat rowing in the same direction. And he said, I think it's going to be better this year, that we have to play for the name of the front of the uniform instead of the names in the back of the uniform. And which really pointed out really something that I really wasn't all that aware of last year, that there were some issues in the clubhouse. And he said it's better already. And I know, and from both the front office and the coaches and the manager and the players, the notion of Santander, Andres Gimenez, and Scherzer all impacting the energy for the team and the clubhouse as a different energy was dramatic. Like, everybody referenced it, that those guys were all bringing a whole different energy into this team about the front of the uniform, that the name on the front of the uniform instead of the back of the uniform, about winning. And Vladdy said that we need to be better that way, and I need to make sure that we're better that way. But for a guy in the last year of his contract, was legitimately and authentically worried about winning this year instead of worrying about the name on the back of the uniform, when, look, he could be worried about the name on the back of the uniform. I was very convinced and surprised, though, by what the issue was last year and how important it was to him and everybody else this year.
Well, we're getting closer and closer to opening day. It is a beautiful thing, Steve, and we'll chat, I'm sure, multiple times before we get there, and we always appreciate you doing this. Thank you.
Okay, you got it, guys. Thanks so much.
There's Steve Phillips, our TSN baseball insider. That's what you want to hear, right? We'll see what comes of it, but that is an interesting. It's not even a report. That's from the horse's mouth. Vladdy's saying the clubhouse wasn't great last year. Well, what does that say about John Schneider and what he's got going on there?
I wonder where he factors into all this. He's the guy that never really gets talked about, right? Like, at some point, if the team continues to not meet standards, like, he's got to be right there in the firing line, does he not?
Yeah, they're all connected. I think Schneider, Atkins, Shapiro. But this is a story that's it's just going to keep going with what the Jays were willing to pay him, what he was really looking for, and now the spin is going to be, well, he wants more than Ohtani, and that's not going to land with Blue Jay fans, right? Because most people want Vladdy to stick around. You want Rogers to pony up. You got to pay a lot of money, but you also got to be reasonable to an extent. I get it's a negotiation, it's your life. But it's kind of like the Marner thing. Like, do you really, like, you keep saying, love it, Toronto, I don't ever want to leave, want to be here forever. Okay, then are you going to sign? Like, here's a great offer. Are you going to take it? We'll see. Deadlines, not talking. Okay, well, at some point, you got to prove it. You got to put up or shut up. Best bet still to come. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app. All right, today's best bets powered by FanDuel. Make your picks and assemble a same-game parlay in seconds on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. One play. Pistons. I can't believe I'm going to lay the points here. Pistons minus 14.5 at home against Washington, though. Did you see that team play basketball last night?
No, I did not see that one.
The Raptors had 73 rebounds last night. I believe that's an accurate stat. That is unheard of. They are so horrendous. And Detroit's been playing pretty well, man. Pretty well. Like, they're going to make the playoffs, probably the play-in. But I'll lay the points. A massive number, but Washington is full-out tank mode. That's your best bets, powered by FanDuel. Live same-game parlays are now available for every NBA game on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Please play responsibly, 18+, physically located in Ontario. All right, boys. Great stuff as always. Appreciate you guys doing this. Good seeing you guys. Thanks to everyone behind the scenes for helping out. We appreciate it. Thanks to everyone for tuning in today. TV, radio, podcast, web. We appreciate that. We're out of here. Enjoy your evenings. Enjoy the games tonight. We're back tomorrow at
4 p.m.
We'll chat then.